Today we're going to be building the Sally Racer box stock version. So today I'm going to be building the Sally Racer, and it's going to be the box stock version. So I'm going to replace the torque-tuned motor in here with a box stock motor, and you'll see step by step how I build my cars. So hopefully you'll learn some things from it. I'll describe everything that I'm doing every step of the way. So yeah, it'll be a great learning process for all of you newbies out there. I have a motor pre-prepared for this. It's a 26,000 RPM box stock motor, Mabuchi, that I basically broke in from my stash of motors here. These are motors that I collected over the course of time from all the spare parts boxes that I accumulated. So yeah, I have tons and tons of spare parts from all of the kits that I've used, like for, let's say, mock frames, for example. Mock frames are a very popular car kit with me, so I would use the plastic Canopy parts, maybe replacement wheels, tires, things like that, but the motors I would just stash away in a separate box altogether. So that's where they go. And so here's a Mabuchi motor, yes. So this Sally Racer comes with a torque-tuned motor, and you cannot use torque-tuned in your box stock races, so hence this motor here. So long as you use a box stock motor in your Sally Racer, you will be able to run this in box stock races. So a quick overview of what Sally Racer includes. Whoa, look at this, orange and yellow parts, very, very cool. We have here, I believe these are carbon wheels. So yeah, there's a very special carbon reinforced wheel here, very, very nice. And yeah, it's like slightly shiny. It's not totally matte like other carbon wheels. We also have here, I think these are hard or super hard. Let's see. They are hard, small diameter, low profile tires. So yeah, with low profile, these are not offset. So all of these four wheels are the same width. Very, very cool. So you won't get like wider rears and more narrow fronts on this. Very, very cool. We have here a very familiar chassis for those of you who race the Panda Racer. So the Panda Racer is on a Super 2 chassis, but you can actually place it on a VZ chassis car. So many people have done this that they've now produced this Sally Racer car in VZ chassis. Pretty darn cool. It's been a long time coming, and I think a lot of people could see it coming, because Super 2 canopies or cowls are totally compatible with, or most largely compatible with, VZ chassis. So very, very cool. And here is the special, this is the special Sally Racer torque-tuned motor, and it's imprinted with a label that has Sally on it. Very, very cool, but we'll set this aside for the moment because we won't be using it for this kit. We have all these yellow parts here, ABS plastic, very, very cool. We have the instruction manual, we have the parts, we have the stickers, we have Sally herself. Yeah. Now, using Sally in a box stock kit here is optional. If you want to add it, that's cool. It adds a nice little delightful touch to your models when you have a little animal inside your animal racer, but it's not necessary to use it in your animal racers if you want to go for a little bit more speed, for example. So if you want this to be slightly heavier to deal with certain tracks, you put Sally in there. If you want it to be more speedy on certain tracks, you omit Sally. So pretty darn cool. So here, the stickers are printed on this foil sticker sheet. Very, very nice. Very shiny, very cool. And I don't think there's anything really special about this, but we're going to be checking the shafts to make sure that they're absolutely straight. So if they're not straight, or they're just slightly less than straight, if they're slightly less than straight, then that's okay. But if they're totally out of whack, totally bent in a weird way, that's not cool, and we may have to replace them with alternate parts that were from other box stock kits. So let's take a look at everything now. Let's just cut apart the pieces that we need to. And yeah, we'll start assembling this kit. So I'm using here these Tamiya hand nippers to basically trim away the tires from the sprues. I'm going to be building this in real time, as you see here. And what I like to do is to start with taking the tires off the sprues first. Get a really close nip right there. Boop. Yep, make sure, just take your thumb, smooth out over the surface of the tire, and make sure it is as smooth as you can make it. If there's a little bump, then just go over it with the nippers to make sure that you get every last little piece of rubber off of the thing. So there we go. So, so yeah, different parts of your nipper are good for different things. So you might want to adjust your nippers to either the front part or the rear part, depending on how you nip. So here I'm placing it directly in the middle and I'm nipping off. And yeah, very, very nice. Very, very cool. And so we've got these two parts, we can just dispose of them. And again, doing this all in real time, so there's no filter. So I'm going to try to keep it like very, very PG-13. But all of my videos are basically like PG-13. Nothing is like really for adult consumption. Like, I don't really curse, so that's a good thing. You don't need to curse if you've got like a vocabulary to express what you really feel. So there you go. So here we go. Unless you want to like, unless you're like frustrated, then it's like, ah, darn, that kind of thing. But otherwise, you can use vocabulary for everything. So there we go. Removing all of the tires from the sprue. Then we can remove here, these wheels here from their sprues. So here, there we go. So there's a technique, right? So it should be smooth, right? It should be a smooth cut. So if any of you have experienced God hand nippers, right here, these are like the ultimate nippers, but you have to have a certain mindset when you're using them. You're actually pressing one edge of the blade. Well, so there's this, right? So there's a blade here, and there's not so much of a blade here. It's not really a blade, it's just a holder. So you place this against the thing that you're cutting, and then the blade, you have to use the top parts, the top fingers, to push down or pull back towards you. So that's a different kind of nipping than is the Tamiya nippers. So that has its place, and sometimes I'm in the mood to use God hand, but today I think it's fine to just use Tamiya. So Tamiya, you can just place equal pressure on the thumb and the fingers, unless you want to do a kind of God hand kind of mode where you're just pressing down with the top fingers, and that's perfectly acceptable too. So that's what I'm doing here. So there we go. If you nip this way, you'll find you'll have a more consistent edge, right? So all of your edges will be more consistent. If you nip by applying pressure on both sides, your thumb and your forefingers, then you'll find that some of the nips will not be as nice as you'd like them to be. So here we got them off the sprue, dispose, and we're going to feel around for any sorts of like bird edges, and if there are, you can either sand them down or just give them another good nip, and they should smooth out. Just the action of pressing these nippers against the sides of the wheels, against these burrs, will actually smooth them out a little bit too. So don't worry so much about little micro pieces that aren't exactly smooth. You want to get it as close as possible. Now, remember what I said in other videos. Everything that you do here in these little models, they are 1/32 scale models. So everything that you do, imagine this model were 32 times its size. That's the size of a full car. So any little thing that affects something small such as this is going to affect it in a major way when you're racing. So you gotta make sure that if you do make little errors in judgment and there are little burrs, make sure they're not too big, right? So little burrs should be little burrs, right? So you should hardly feel it, and then they won't affect the performance of the car. Now, if you have something like a big burr, like I remember one friend who built one of these cars, and she was not able to get a real close nip on any of these parts here, and unfortunately her car was not the best performing vehicle, and I had to go through and basically re-nip all the parts, and yeah, it was just without my intervention, the car would not have performed as well as it could have. And it's a shame, right? Like she got really offended when I said that, hey, what you did was not quite up to spec. And I didn't even say it like that. She just got offended, period. I think there are other reasons why she was offended, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So Really, if you cannot take any criticism when you're building a model, then you probably shouldn't be building a model at all. So models require very precise builds. You cannot just haphazardly build one of these things and call it a day. You cannot just simply nip these things off and just expect this whole thing to be like a super high performance car. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to clip this off right here. I'm going to just snip this off, and I'm going to show you some plastic parts. And I'm going to show you the equivalent of what she did, and this is something that you should avoid. So for example, let's say I was nipping off one of these rollers off of here, right? So you see that these rollers, they're on the sprue right here, and what all she was doing was she was just like haphazardly clipping them off and leaving these things on. See, these little end pieces. You have to smooth out the edges of the rollers. That's like the most important thing ever, and it's even stated in the manual that you should be doing this. So you have to follow the instructions. The instructions are there for a reason, so read the manual. That's all I have to say. So you see here, on here, it's showing you how to cut these pieces off of the sprues, right? So you have to make sure that you are complying to such, right? So here, you don't see a thing sticking out of this roller right here, you see? So because there's not a thing sticking out of the roller, you should try to make your pieces exactly the same way. So that's what you have to do. And if you don't do it, the performance of your car will suffer. So there we go. So if I do this and just try to trim away all of that sprue stuff, there you go. That's what we want. We want that. And we want it even more so than that. So yeah, you might have to like go over it a few times with your finger to make sure that it's completely smooth. You might have to buff it down with a little sanding block, right, to make sure it's super smooth. But you don't just leave it like that with a thing sticking out of it. And so, yeah, that's one of the things, that's like step one. Don't leave little things on your rollers or other parts. So you can clip them off just like this, right, in sort of like you're preparing these things to be clipped or nipped properly. So you just leave them on the table like that. But then you have to go over them again. So you have to follow the instructions totally. So here, these aren't going to affect the performance of this car. So I'm going to nip it real close right now. And this is just the battery latch to cover up the batteries, to keep them in place. This part here is the gear motor cover for the top part here. So we can nip them close. You don't have to get them that perfect, but if you're a stickler for perfection like I am, then you will. And then we have here the tail, right? So the tail here, it really doesn't matter as much on these roller mounts, the tail and the front part, the front tail and the back tail. But I'm going to make sure that they are smooth anyway. So here I'm going over them again and again and again, and each time I go over them, it gets a little smoother. So let me see. There we go. Okay. Good. Good. Am I still recording? Let's see. Yes, I am. All right. So, a review, we're building the Sally Racer. And the Sally Racer is really, really cool. It's basically like the Panda Racer, except it has a VZ chassis. And a lot of you know that I've already converted my Super 2 Panda Racer into a VZ chassis car. And yeah, the canopies, the cowls are interchangeable between Super 2 and VZ. In fact, I don't think that's the case with all Super 2 and all VZ canopies, but from the ones that I've seen so far, they are. So, yeah. All right, there we go. Let's make sure it's smooth. It is. Very nice. So it's pretty straightforward, right? The only things you have to really care about to get super fine detailed with is the rollers, and we're going to go back to them. So here, I did a good nip there, so I don't feel any burrs at all. So this was the motor cover, and now we have the gear cover. Very nice and smooth. And then we have the motor holder. Nice. And then we have the on-off switch. Very nice. And we have the body catch latch. Okay, and that might require a little bit more. So many of you may know that I am going to be participating in the 16th World Yoga Championship, and that's going to be in Malaysia. So I'm basically a part of Team USA, and I will be demonstrating my yoga routine to these very, very harsh judges. And yeah, they're going to be reviewing every little nuance that my routine has, and yeah, 6 postures. And it's going to be very, very challenging because there are a lot of really good competitors this year. A lot of people came back from the pandemic, and they're really, really good. They were like really good pre-pandemic, and now they're really good post-pandemic. So I've been very, very impressed by seeing a lot of these people re-enter the championships. So I think the US is like one of the most popular, it's like where yoga is extremely popular. So besides India, the US is like the second most popular place for yoga. And then there's Australia. Australia has a really good number of people out there that practice yoga and compete. And then there's a lot of people in China also that are really, really good. They're very disciplined. They bring a different kind of mentality to the whole yoga competition. But world champions, yeah, it'd be nice to have another American winning gold again. That would be very, very nice. So I'm going to try my best. That's all you can hope to do. A lot of you know that if you've been following my yoga activities, a lot of you know that my yoga routine is very unorthodox compared to most. So a lot of people demonstrate these really fancy, like standing split type poses, and I don't do that sort of thing. I can do so many other things, but not standing splits. So, and that's okay, because if everybody did the same thing in all of their yoga routines, it would be very boring. Imagine seeing the very same routine in gymnastics from everyone, the very same routine in figure skating from everyone. That would be very boring. I don't think they would be as popular as they are, because you would see the same things again and again and again. So here we go. Now we're nipping these canopy parts, this one big hard shell canopy. So here is the thing, with this hard shell canopy, this provides a nice stable canopy for the car. And I hate these little things, don't you? It's this little like, this is like the little sprue end that happens. Let me see if I can use God Hand to make it smoother. Probably not, but we'll see. So basically, you might need to sand it down. Yeah, God Hand's not gonna do it. But yeah, I have these sanding blocks, and you can basically take your time and basically sand this down so that you can barely see it. And yeah, some people care about this, but other people don't care so much about it because they know that, oh, there's probably a sticker that will cover it up. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. So I don't think this is covered by a sticker, this part. But yeah, if this really bothers you, then yeah, do sand it down. But really, you can cause more trouble. It's more trouble than it's worth in some cases, and you might make it worse too by doing too much sanding. So yeah, that's pretty good. So this is not going to affect the performance of the car. So there we go. Now let's do these other parts too. And a lot of people like to experiment with these particular parts here. This is this is a piece that optionally plugs into this part here. So if you put this in right now and snap it in place, it's going to be very difficult to remove it. So I'm not going to snap it in place yet. So this is where you would put the sticker of the duck on here, as you see. Very interesting and very cool. And then there are other parts too. There's this part here. It's like a little fuselage, I think it is. I think it's called. So here, let's just make it smoother. So I just got back from New York not long ago with my oldest son, and we went to this one ramen place that I told him about. It's Ippudo Ramen in New York City, where a bowl of ramen is like some outrageous price, like $22, but it's really good. It's really worth it. It's not a very large place. It was larger. It felt larger the last time I went there, but like anything in life, when you go there a couple of times, you're like wowed by everything, and then you go back again, it's like, oh, that's not how I remember it, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not that large of a place, but the bowls of ramen there are very delightful. They are a little overpriced, I'll admit. I think that the better price for them would be like $5 cheaper, but it's got this awesome reputation of using like the highest quality ingredients and stuff. So if you are in New York City, do check out Ippudo. They are really good, and you'll get a ramen experience that's unlike any you've ever experienced before. It's nothing like the packaged noodles kind of ramen, things like that. Most people think ramen are just like the 6 for $1 packaged noodles. The noodles are even different. The noodles are straight rather than those curly things. And the broth is so good. The broth is cooked for over 24 hours. It's a pork bone broth. It's really good. So it's something that you have to just try at least once. And if you really like it, then go back again, like what I do from like on a yearly basis. So pretty cool. So I just want to make sure that everybody gets to see all the parts as I'm building this kit. Now this thing here, I don't even use this anymore. So I keep this as like spare stuff, like if I want to give this to someone who actually needs it, right? Because tubes of grease are sometimes difficult to find. So the next best thing is to use the grease that they include in the kit. So for me though, I really prefer a certain type of grease. And if it's not F grease in the tubes, then it's this Cera grease. Cera Grease HG, boron nitride compound. One tube of this will last you for quite a while, so I suggest you get this. There's also another grease that's kind of like a black sticky substance, or not sticky, but it's just greasy, and it is good too. However, I like this one better, Cera Grease. It seems to be just as slippery as the black stuff, but it doesn't leave that black residue on your parts. So then we also have these metal contacts, and I'm disposing of all these little plastic bags because we don't really need to have them, right? It's like there's just getting away these plastic bags. I try to reuse things as much as I can, but these plastic bags don't really lend themselves to reusing them for things. They seem to be purely disposable. So, but if any of you are using these little plastic bags for things, then yeah, comment in the comment below, because I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say about reusing the little plastic bags here. I know that the big plastic bags, like the ones that contain the ABS parts, those can be reused and they're great. But the little ones, I have questions as to what you can really do with them after you've taken your parts out of them. Okay, so let's begin first by making sure that our tires are clean, and we are going to assemble the tires onto the wheels. And what I like to do is try to find any sort of bumps on the tire here, and I try to line up one of the spokes with the bumps. The bump that I see, first the bump that I choose. So let's see if we can do this. I got this one and one, two. There we go. Okay, so here I am pulling on the tire, pushing with my thumbs into the tire, pulling the tire towards the lip, rotating and pulling and pushing, pulling and pushing. So I'm pulling on the tire and pushing my thumbs, the wheel, towards the tire. So pulling the tire towards the wheel and pushing the wheel towards the tire. So there we go. Now I'm going to do the same with the other three. Now, remember there's a front part and a back part. The back part of the wheel is flatter than the front part. The front part has a slight bevel. So again, we find the part where we nipped. Here's one of them. Let's see if I find a bigger one. Here's the other. Okay, so we find where we nipped off the tire from the sprue, and we line it up with the spokes. So these spokes here, it looks like there's a lot of spokes on here, right? But if you look at the back of it, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's actually it's actually a 6-spoke wheel right here on the behind part. So we want to line up one of the 6 spokes to this nub that's on the tire. Okay, pull towards the wheel, push wheel towards the tire. Turn and do the same, turn and do the same, turn and do the same, turn and do the same. Keep doing it until everything feels flat. Okay, so here we go again. There, I find the nub. Line it up with one of the 6 spokes. So why do we try to line up the nubs to the spokes? That way, when we're assembling the wheels, the wheel-tire combinations onto the car, onto the axles, then we're going to get a consistent turn. So you want the same points of contact on each tire while they're rotating. If you have a nub up here and a nub down there on the different wheel tire combos, and they're rotating, you're going to get that jalopy effect. You want to have a consistent rotation. So you have the 2 nubs aligned. There's usually 2 nubs in each tire. You want the 2 nubs aligned with the 2 nubs on the other wheel tire combo. That way, even if you do get that, so a tire never rolls completely in a circular direction. But listen to this point, because this point is the most important point, and I feel that this is like, I'll call this super high-level expert knowledge. A tire never rotates in a circular motion. The tire, because of those little nubs, it's always going to rotate in an ovular motion. However slight the oval is, it's always going to rotate in an ovular motion, unless you've shaved the tires and made them exactly round. So with an ovular motion, you want to get the 2 ovals to be exactly the same direction. You don't want them to give you that weeble wobble like jalopy effect. So there you go. That's Super Sensei knowledge. Okay, one more. So some of you might be wondering, oh, who's your sensei? Everybody else seems to have a sensei, right? My sensei passed away a long time ago. I'll tell you, my original sensei, when I was going for my PhD in computer science, that's my sensei. I was supposed to be one of the youngest PhD graduates ever, but that didn't happen. I stopped after a while. I didn't want to finish my PhD in computer science because it's boring. It's just math on the upper levels, and I just hated it. And yeah, math is cool, but it's like I didn't want to write a dissertation, a PhD dissertation, based on theoretical principles. I wanted to do more applicable things in life. So a PhD would not have suited me to do real-world things. Now, there are PhDs out there and doctoral degree programs that enable you to do practical things, but computer science, especially at Penn, wasn't one of them, unfortunately. I think nowadays they have more applicable PhD programs, things that apply to real-life situations, but in the past, long, long ago, a PhD in computer science at Penn was like basically a math degree. It was an applied math degree. And for many of my colleagues, that was great, right? But for me, it wasn't what I wanted. And I'm glad that I discovered that after a couple of years into the program. So yeah, pretty cool. But if I did get my PhD, I would have been on a totally different track than what I'm doing now, right? I probably wouldn't be building all this stuff. Or maybe I would, but maybe I'd find it like a little bit later in life or something. Because I'd be way too busy trying to get my next grant from the NSF or something like that. And that would be terrible, because you're basically competing against your peers to try to win these grants. And it's just totally terrible. It's very cutthroat to be a professor at an Ivy League university, or even a non-Ivy League university. So yeah. All right, so we have these palm parts, right? And palm parts are slick plastic parts. And yeah, I'll call them slick or slippery. This is where like you place your axles in. So these go into these palm holders right here. And the wheels and axles go, you thread them through here. And depending on how well you build your car, inserting these wheels into the chassis and allowing them to freely rotate, you can see how straight your wheel and tire combos are. So yeah, it's going to be based very much on like mostly luck, how straight your wheel shafts are, and some skill. So I'm going to show you. First I'm going to clip these parts off, and we're going to clean up the edges like we did. So this is a coarse cut right now. So a lot of this information, a lot of this knowledge can be found in the courses that I teach. And I think I have one of them up online. If it's not available publicly, then you can always subscribe to my channel. So by subscribe to my channel, I mean you pay the monthly membership fee, and that gets you access to all these other videos like this Sensei Knowledge. So yeah, very cool stuff. Now, let me just qualify what I said earlier about Sensei Knowledge. Sensei Knowledge is not just limited to mini four-wheel drive stuff. Sensei Knowledge is like everything engineering. So very few people get into PhD in engineering program. It's very difficult. And I'm just going to say now that, like, I'm not going to say, one sensei is better than another sensei, blah, 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 like that kind of thing. But there's different kinds of senseis. And, you know, you have people who are very good at one thing, and they're a sensei in that thing. But if you're really good overall in a certain topic or field, then that's a much stronger sensei than a sensei in just one thing. At that point, if you're good at engineering in general, versus just mini four-wheel drive stuff, you're not just a sensei anymore. You're like higher than a sensei. And in Japanese martial arts, we call that a shihan. So a shihan is like you are an expert level engineering person. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean, though, if you're a shihan in engineering, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be like super pro level expert in mini four-wheel drive, but you understand certain things, certain principles that allow you to come up with the proper theories that apply to the practice of mini four-wheel drive or other things. And I feel that with my engineering knowledge, I feel that in many cases that has helped me with everything that I've done in my life, be it yoga, archery, mini four-wheel drive, remixing over 1,000 songs that got onto various lists, radio stations and club lists all over the world. CJ, aka Brooklyn Slice. Enjoy the show. Attending law school. I mean, these are easy for someone who's a shihan. You might be a shihan in what you do, right? Like, there might be some high-level knowledge that you have that makes you a shihan, that you can apply that knowledge to other things. So, does a shihan have to be limited to just engineering? Absolutely not. You could be a shihan in the humanities. You can be a shihan in social sciences. So, for example, if you are a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, an MD, but a psychologist, PhD in psychology, you probably have a really good understanding of how you could out-psych someone else. So just because you're not the fastest racer in mini four-wheel drive, you know the psychology of how certain people think, and you could beat them using your psychological skills, your mental skills, your ability to figure out how they behave, right? All of your competition, how they behave. And if you can figure out ways of beating them that way, you're in an advantage. You're a Shihan, and you can beat people that way. So yeah, a Shihan is not limited to engineering. In fact, many four-wheel drive people are really good senseis in sensei level people in engineering, but many of them are not, and that's okay. That's just how it is. Like, some people are good at science, other people are good at art. Some people are good in dealing with things of the mind. So you can be a Shihan in a great many things. So can everybody be a Shihan? Yes, but you have to really devote a good part of your life to it. So if you don't like studying, you don't like school, you don't like things like that, it's probably not a Shihan. So, but if you do like to continue learning about everything, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like a formal school. You could go to community colleges, you could learn things online, but you have to be the best at it, and then you're a Shihan. We have this racing group, and we have some of the, I'll call them masters at what they do, masters of their craft. And it's really beautiful to see how expert level they are in the things that they do. We have master of battery voltages, and yeah, I would consider Andre and William in our group to be master of battery voltages, even Shihan level. I think they are Shihan level if they can do that, because it requires a great knowledge of electricity, and I think that their background basically enables them to know, to basically cull together all this information and disseminate it to people. The fact that they're always trying to teach people is what makes them a Shihan also. So a Shihan is not just someone who has all that knowledge. A Shihan has the ability to teach that knowledge. And they're okay with teaching everyone this knowledge. And it's wonderful to see this, to see people just wanting to help others in this way. So then we have Master of Motors, Evan. Evan has some of the fastest tuned and open class cars I've seen yet, and he is definitely a Shihan in terms of motors and things like that. So that requires very strong engineering knowledge as well. We have Master of Speed, and that is where Chris and Chris's son come in, and so they have an expert level Shihan knowledge of engineering principles to be able to, and the fact that they look at everything with such focus and a fine-tooth comb, that makes them Shihans too. So really, really good. It was really nice to have these people on our team. So here we go. We are going to check these axles for straightness. And here is an axle checker, and a lot of people might not like this one totally a lot, but it has worked well for me so far. It has this on the side, 1.99, and it's, look at that. It's not exactly straight, but it goes through, right? It just doesn't slide through all the way. So, and these aren't terribly bad, but they could be better, right? So I'm kind of like just halfway okay with them. Let's see if we have something better. All right, we got this one. This one I believe I tested. Goes straight through. So we're going to use this one, at least as its rear axle. So this is a rear mounted engine. We're going to use this as its rear axle. So you place your better axle where the motor is. So if it's a front mount motor like an FMA, you place the good axle in the front and the one that's not so good on the opposite end. If it's rear mounted, you place the good one in the rear and the not so good one towards the front. So let's see if we have any ones that are better than these, because I have these two other axles right here to test, and whichever is the straightest one will win. So how do you test for which is the straightest one? You just drop them in there at an angle, and if it comes through like whichever goes through the most is the winner. So let's see. This one is having a hard time. Let's see. Yeah, it's having a hard time even going through all the way. It's not showing out through the other side. This one, let's see. Okay, it goes out through this much. And how about this one? About the same. So they're both kind of crappy. We'll just use one of these crappy ones for the front. So we got a rear, we got a front. That's good. So here I am going to insert these palms into this. So according to the manual, how do you insert these palms? Do you insert them where the nipped off bird end goes inside or outside? Let's take a look. So if you look at this closely, you will see there's that burr right there. See, that little burr nipped off burr. And it's not displayed here, right? So that means, ergo, that you take this bird end and you have it on the inside. If you take a look at this picture here, it actually shows you it's on the inside of towards the chassis. So here's the burr right there on that side. You can see it, maybe not so clearly, but it's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on the inside, and I'm going to try to line it up so that the burr is pointing towards the ceiling. So, and you want to try to have all of these burrs pointing in the same direction if you can, at least on the front versus the back. So here we go. Now, trimming them properly is the key to success, because if they're not trimmed properly, they're not going to be flush against the chassis right here. So here we go again, another one, where I'm going to aim the bird end towards the ceiling. Insert in, good. Okay, two more. The bird end. It's going to go northwards. Okay, and the final one. Okay, very nice. So now we have this, and we want to lubricate the insides of the palms. So I'm using here this oil pen, and we just simply insert into each hole, swig it around, or swish it around. And I'll also lubricate this hole here because we're going to be inserting the gears for this soon, and we also want to lubricate this here as well as this here, and then we're good. Okay, so cap this up. Now, this part here, we want to make sure that when we place this piece in, this propeller shaft, you see how this is right now. I could actually move this back and forth on here. It slides up and down pretty easily, and there's a little bit of a gap right there. We want to minimize this gap as much as we can, because the greater the gap, the more power we lose. So we want to try to knock this or this pinion more onto the shaft so that there's less of a gap. So I'm going to use one of my wheel remover tools to do that. So here we have a wheel remover tool, and it's pretty heavy, pretty solid, and I'm going to just gently tap on the end of the pinion gear here. So I'm looking for the pinion that's not so flush against, the axle is not so, or the shaft that is not so flush against the pinion, like this one. So here, I'm going to knock it down so that it's more flush. Now, when I put this back in, ooh, I see a little dust. Whenever you see dust, blow it out with your air. Okay, here we go. Now if it's too flush, if it doesn't move, then you've got a problem too, because if there's no gap between the pinion and where it's seated, you've got a huge problem. It's not going to move as quickly as you want it to. You want it to move freely. So there's still a little bit of gap there, and I can knock this down a little bit more to try to get it more flush. So let's do that. Remember to knock it down top to down, top to bottom that is. You don't want to ever knock it at an angle because you could bend the propeller shaft. So here we go again. That's a bit better. Maybe a little more. Sometimes I get a little anal retentive over this one. Try not to get too anal retentive over things. You can also use that little ball peen hammer too. Okay, this is very nice. This is very nice. I've got a little gap, not too much, not too little. Good. And it slides freely. Now, I'm going to ensure that this is going to move freely in there by oiling this part right here next to the pinion and this part. Very nice. And I'll cap this back up. And then I can put this in place. Good. Nice. And now I'm going to place these parts in there like so. So here we go. Now I'm going to assemble the motor mount. So here we go. How do we do this? We take the little one, slide it in here, then we just clip this in place. It should snap in place. And then we have the other one. This should be relatively straightforward. If you run into any issues where it doesn't seem to snap in place because the metal is bent, then you might need to rebend the metal to get it to snap in place. So usually the long one is the one that gives difficulty. So let's take a look here. There we go. It just snapped right in place. Now you see here, you've got these contacts right here for the batteries. You want to put a little bit of sponge underneath them so that they stay in place. They don't bend too far in. If they bend too far in, you've got an issue then. And the issue being that sometimes you turn on the car and the car doesn't want to run. So you want to make sure that the sponge is there to prevent that from happening. So let me see, where did I put it? Here it is. You can use any sponge you'd like. Generally, the 2mm sponge is the best. But failing that, you can use 3mm sponge. But try to use 2mm if you can. Sometimes it's hard to get 2mm sponge. There we go. I've got some 2mm here. All right. So does it matter if you use pink or blue? No. Not for this. So here, as you see, I'm just putting the sponge behind the contact. And just shift this a little bit, get the sponge up more. There we go. That's a nice one. And now the other side. Let's just make sure it's a little more flush. Okay, good. And now the blue one. Okay, there we go for this. So it should look like this. Okay, then we can mount our motor on there, but before we do that, we need, okay, so this is a black pinion. We need one of these little guys. It's a pinion gear holder, and normally you can get them from MA chassis kits. But for single shaft kits, they don't include one for whatever reason. So let's put this in place. Can you see? And then push this right on top, from top to bottom. There we go. Yes. So that's how you would insert this on here. And as you see, I've labeled it 26 for 26,000 RPM. And now some of you might question, like, how are you getting your 26,000 RPM measurements? You use Geary. You can use whatever you want. Basically, your numbers might be different than other people's numbers. So don't worry so much about the numbers. Worry about how your numbers compare against other numbers of your motors, because you're just comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. Okay, so now we want to lubricate this gear. Okay, I think I did a little too much on that side, so I'm going to take this pen here and just use the brush to wipe off the excess. That should be good. Oh, got a hair there for some reason. Okay, good. And now, I set this aside for the moment. In fact, I think I want to oil this engine. It's a little difficult to oil these Mabuchi motors. They don't have as many holes as the other ones, the SMC. Okay, so that's that. So now we're going to place our shaft on the wheel. This is for the rear. Good. I thread it through. So let me just make sure. Here, another precaution is alcohol wipes. Make sure that the shafts are clean. Right, so some people might use lighter fluid to wash all of their metal parts. You can also use alcohol to clean the shafts. Make sure that there's no debris on them. Good. Good thing to do with the propeller shaft in the middle. Good. Okay. And again, we're going to insert this in. Good. We're going to line up the bumps. So there's a bump right there. Take another one of these wheels and line up the bumps. Push this together. Good, this is nice. Bumps on top. And I'm going to use the wheel pusher to secure the wheels onto the shaft. Okay. All right, so here I have the wheels in place with my top two fingers. I can slide this freely across. Now I turn 1, 2, 3 back. 1, 2, 3 back. You want to do this back and forth motion because you don't want to keep torquing the wheels onto the shaft. You want to be gentle. Good. If you keep torquing in one direction without loosening, you're going to potentially create an issue with the wheel. You might warp it. You might warp the axle holders inside each wheel. Okay, we're almost there. So in fact, if you go back and forth, you'll see there's still a little bit of shake, a little bit of room right there. So I'm going to do a little bit more. Now there might be the case that it's not going to exactly get on there, right? That's okay. There's a little bit of space, a little bit of wiggle room, and when you spin this without the axle, it should be pretty straight. And it is. It's very straight. Yeah, there we go. So you hear, but if I move it slightly apart, it's very smooth and very silent. So we're going to be oiling that little space, that little gap between where the chassis is, the pump, and where the wheel is, and that'll make everything even smoother. Okay, great. Now let's look at the front of this. Now the front of this requires you to place this little piece right here, this metal contact right here, like so. It also requires you to place this little on-off latch, like so. And with this in place, when you turn the switch on, it brings this contact down to contact the battery. So it's very simple, that's all it is. So here we go, just like that. If we turn this, you can see what's happening here. There's movement of this front gear, and we're going to lubricate everything, again, using this. So let's lubricate. Yes. Good. Lubricate this, just a pre-lubrication, and then we'll also attach these wheels onto the shaft. I think you can see that. Yeah. Top to bottom. And then place this in like so, and it's going to go underneath this power latch, and then through here like so. So it goes underneath this. And then the other side, so we're going to line up the bumps. So here's a bump right here. Let me see if there's a bigger bump. There's a bigger bump right there. So we're going to line up the big bumps with the big bumps. So let's go like that. I think this one's a bigger bump here. So, there, perfect. The two bumps are aligned. So now we're going to use the wheel press. Two fingers on top. Notice it's very mobile here. And now 1, 2, 3, back. 1, 2, 3, back. 1, 2, 3, back. 1, 2, 3, back. And there's a little bit of movement. I'll just do it 1. I think that's it. Okay, that's it. So now, I'm going to place this cover on. So before I place the cover on, a little bit more lube now that everything's in place. Okay. Good. And we're going to lube all this part here. Yeah. This part here. Yeah. So here, I am simply moving this forward and placing this tube of lube, of grease that is, against this yellow gear, coating this yellow gear, spur gear, with grease. And make sure that I get one good solid revolution around, covered with grease. Not too much, not too little. Yes. Okay, good. And I should have enough grease on the other side too. Make sure. Yes. Make sure that all the teeth are covered in grease. And then we'll place this on top, like so. This one, you basically push in like this, and snap it in place. And on the bottom side, you can actually add sponge material to keep it in place, because sometimes these pop out. So now, when we spin this, it should be relatively fast, right? So we're spinning it this way, and it's going to come up, it's going to pop up because there's nowhere to go, right? So we want to keep it in place. So how do we do that? We place this in there, the motor, okay, and then we have this, and we want to put our remaining palm into our speed gear. So our remaining palm, so the burr part, the burr side, goes on the inside of the gear. So I'm going to put this down like so. I'm going to put this on the top of it. So here we have, yeah, just like that, and push down. Sorry for the train. There's a train that arrives all the time around here. We take our tool right here. Where's the top of the tool? There is a top of the tool. The cap, basically. Ah, here it is. So you take the cap of this part here and you push inward, and that flattens the palm inside the speed gear. Now you're good to go. You can just lubricate the inside of this. Lubricate the inside of this. And now you can insert this in. And a little preliminary test. I like to hold it like this very gently and spin it. And I'll see how freely it spins, and it spins nicely on here. Sometimes, if you'd like, you can lubricate this as well, and then insert it. Some people are very anal retentive, and they'll clean this part too with lighter fluid. Nice. So now we're going to insert this into our car. Just like so. And now we're going to put the motor, not the motor cover, but the speed gear cover on top. So this one goes in like so. So you see where the screw hole is, that's always to the upper right. So we'll slip this in, push down, snaps in place, and we will secure this later. But right now, suffice it to say, this should be a working system. So we're going to put batteries in and test it. I have my Duracell Optimus. Oh, we can also put this in too. There we go. Snap this motor cover in place, keeps the motor in place. And now, this goes back, this goes front. And now, moment of truth. And then you just study the patterns of the wheels, right? So the tires, that is. You want to make sure that the tires and the wheel combos are perfectly straight. So the back side is as perfect as it can be with a straight shaft. The front side has a little bit of wobble, I see. Quite a bit of wobble. So we might need to replace this shaft to a straighter shaft in the future, but for the time being, we're going to leave it as is. I'm not so much concerned about the front as I am the rear. The rear is where the power is going to be. The front is more or less a stabilization source, so if you can get this more stable, then the more stable this car is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to label the front and the rear battery contacts. So what I like to do is place the plus where you face the battery. So here, the plus goes on this side. And then here, plus goes on this side. So if you have your open class cars, you're probably going to be shaving away things, so you might not be able to label it so easily. So give that a try though. Label them so that you don't insert your batteries in backwards, because I've done that in the past and your cars go backwards and you'll cause all sorts of havoc. So don't put your batteries in backwards. We're going to add the roller mounts and finish the canopy. Maybe we'll add the stickers on, we'll see. So here it's very simple. You just latch this on like so. It goes click, click, and there it is, the battery latch. And then we have these roller mounts, and one goes in the rear and one goes in the front. This one here slots exactly in the front like so. So it only goes in one way, as you see. You can't put it in upside down, although you can try. You can try other combinations. This one works too. But yeah, typically it's supposed to slot in this way. So we have these screws here. We have this here. And according to the instructions, they want you to put this front mount onto these two screws right here. The two screws are this top one and this one. So let's see, do they want it on the underside? They want it on the bottom side. Yeah. So you're putting them in through the bottom. Okay. This one and this one. So before I put the screws in, do this. Oil them. It'll make the insertion of the screws so much easier. So let's insert in a bit. You don't have to go in all the way. You can tighten it after. You can also use one of these motorized screwdrivers, but in the beginning you want to make sure that you have a feel for it, right? So I like to make sure that things are put in manually first, so I can feel the screw, I can feel where it goes. But if you're very steady, then you can use the automatic screwdriver. So here we go. I'll do it towards the end. Okay. And then reserve the final tightening for the manual screwdriver. So let me just make sure that I'm not stripping the screws. So I'm going back and forth a little bit. Okay, good. Actually, this is not flat, so hold on, it's not good. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure how strong this yellow plastic is. I'm hoping that it's strong, but I have my doubts. Okay. So here we go. And then this part here, do they want you to put on the top or the bottom? This part goes on the top, and the screws are on the top. And I think, yes, it does, right here. But there is a way to put this on the bottom as well. It does fit on the bottom, and those of you who've tried to do this find that this doesn't clear, the rollers don't clear on the bottom, but they actually can if you remove the washer underneath the rollers. So yes, you really can use this in an under part way, in case you want that little bit more of that touch of the rollers to the contact of the incline when you're dealing with inclines. But otherwise, they want you to put it on top like this. And we're going to lubricate the holes, and we're going to insert the screws, and we'll demonstrate for you how this can be done using the automatic screwdriver. So you have to be very careful, of course, and you have to go from top to bottom, and you have to hold steady, and yeah, that's it. And don't drill in all the way. You make sure you use the manual screwdriver at the end, then you'll be good. One, two, three, back, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, back, 1, 2, 3. Seems like this plastic's very soft, so I kind of don't like it. So already I'm kind of like questioning their choices of using this plastic. So yeah, I don't know, I feel like I may have stripped the screw because it's not securing tightly. It's like I've got this infinite twist in here, and that's not good. That is not good at all. Yeah, there's an infinite twist. So your screws will strip easily on here. This is not a durable thing, but it's probably very flexy, right? So with the added flex, it might be good for some tracks. So yeah, your mileage may vary. Okay, so this is now, I'm going to show you my tried and true method of putting rollers on. So rollers, so what we want to do is we want to oil the keyhole of every roller, top and bottom. We want to make sure that the little part that you nipped off is not facing the outside of the vehicle. So they should be facing the inside of the vehicle. So let's first locate the nip. The nip is on top right here, so I'm going to flip it upside down. Good. Now I'm going to put one of these roller screws in place. You don't have to lubricate the roller screw because you've already lubricated the inside of the roller. Now we add the washer. Some people are very anal retentive about the washers also, so they're going to like lighter fluid clean the washers, but that's not necessary. And we'll place this right on top like this, convex side up. And now we are going to place this whole thing into the rear hole, but we're going to first lubricate the holes because you should. And there we go. I'm going to try using my automatic screwdriver for this. Actually, no. I'm going to try the first couple of turns manual screwdriver just to get it in place, just to make sure that's in straight. It is. Okay, here we go. Now the rest of the way, we can use automatic, steady hand, good. And then the final turn is, yes, manual screwdriver. Now let's do that again. So oil on one side, oil on the other side. Find where the burr is. There it is. And then flip it the other way. And now we're going to take the roller screw, insert it in place, and take a washer. Insert it in place, convex side up. Okay. Going to attach the roller screw, a couple of manual turns, so make sure it's straight. It is. And the rest of the way. And final touches. Tighten manually. Good. Other side. Okay. Find the burr side. The burr side is this side. So face it this way. Okay. Good. Automatic screwdriver. Tighten manual. Good. And that one more time. Good. Find the burr side. It's on there, so we flip it. Insert roller screw. Oh. Insert washer. Good. Attach roller screw. Use automatic screwdriver. Tighten with manual. Good. Now the flip side. 2 more of these. So, big question for some of you might be, which holes do you put the rollers in? Depends, right? So depending on the track, you might want to shift the rollers a certain way. So one of my vehicles actually has the rollers shifted slightly, and it seems to work well on 3-lane tracks. Mileage may vary again, right, with all of these. You just have to experiment. Learn how to experiment. So one of the things about being a scientist is you have to always experiment. Right? And you have to make notes of all of your experimentations. And things that you can do, like some improvements that you make, if you can replicate them, that's the important thing. That's the hallmark of a scientist. A scientist doesn't just like come up with wacky theories and never tests them. A scientist comes up with theories, tests them, and then writes down the results of each experiment, or has a mental note of these results. And then you learn from these things. You learn what works and what doesn't. So there you go. This is it. And the final screw. Let's oil this. And there we go. Now this part, this is where, like, some people may beg to differ about things, but if you want, you can insert these parts. You don't have to, but you can if you want to make a complete car, right? So here's the fuselage, and I think if I'm anal retentive about this, make sure I get rid of that little burr right there. Otherwise, it's going to be covered up with a sticker. Yes. And the front part, again, it's optional, but you can put it on. Why not, right? Make this a complete car. There we go. That's it. And now we place this on top, like so. And this should latch from behind, like so. And it's done. Sally Racer, yes. Of course, Sally Racer would not be complete without Sally herself, right? So, let's get Sally out. Here's Sally. Cute. And we want to try to position this first on here to see what it looks like, right? So Sally looks a little imbalanced, right? So there's more plastic, I think, on this side than on this side. So this right arm of Sally, there's more stuff going on than here. And also when you place this right in the car, you'll see she's kind of like tilted over a little bit. So it's kind of a little bit weird. Not sure that this is the best thing to use if you want to balance your car, but it is very cute though to insert this in there. So I'm sure somebody's done the weight distribution of Sally to see which half is actually heavier than the other. So let's prepare this for Sally. So basically what they want you to do is I believe they want you to cut a piece of sticker and then they want you to fold it in half. That's usually what they want you to do as the final step. So here, oh, no, there's no folding in half. So there's just, this is what you must cut your piece to. If you basically use this as a guideline, then you're cutting like almost this part in half and this part about 2/3 of the way. So let's try that. 2/3 of the way. And then this part here, it's a little over half. So it's like 2/3 of the way. So there you go. This piece right here pretty much fits in there. And we're going to line this up. I think that worked out well. There we go. So as you see, she's a little crooked, right? But that's because there's so much more plastic in the arm on this side than this side. And she's leaning a little bit over to the left side, to her left. So because she's leaning a little to the left and there's more plastic on this right side, hopefully this will balance out to an even center. So yeah, you have to take that into consideration. Now if this is not working for you, try pulling Sally off and seeing if it works well without Sally. Otherwise, this should be like where it is. Yep, pretty cool. And yeah, we can now put batteries in this thing. And just do an initial test. Let's see how much battery power is in here. Where my battery checker is. Oh, here it is. So my battery checker says that these Duracells are 1.52. Not too bad, but not too strong. Normally these are 1.73 when you first buy them. So I'm going to put this in place. And just bear in mind that I'm going to test this on the speed checker, but it's probably going to give you faster results if you put in fresh Duracell Optimums. So let's cap all of our stuff back up. because that's always a good thing to do at the end of every build. I want to make sure that all of our oils are capped, our oil pens, grease pencils are capped. Make sure that we put any sharps out of the way, and we can add the stickers on later. I'm not too concerned about stickers. They do add more weight to a vehicle. But anyway, we're going to be placing Sally Racer onto our speed checker, and we'll see how fast it is. These little orange parts here, they're not used in this car. So, yeah. Here we go. And I'm going to turn this on. Okay, that was Sally Racer. 26 kilometers per hour. If you had 171s in here, it'd probably be 27 or 28 kilometers per hour. Pretty darn fast. So a lot of you who have criticized me with my geary measurements and basically saying that, oh, attaching my motors to a G-force and showing that it's whatever RPM I'm showing, a lot of you, once you measure your cars using your speed checker, well, that is a nice way to compare my results to yours. So if you can measure it the same way, placing your two wheels against this part here. Now I know some of you might take issue with the way I actually speed check my cars. Some of you actually want to put your cars like this and then measure the speed that way. That's the old method of doing it. You want to measure it the new method, you do it like this, because I've seen this done by so many people. So how you measure and how I measure may be totally different, and I want to make sure that if you want to get speed tests that are comparable to mine, then try to do it my method, and then you'll be able to see, you can be able to compare how your cars are to my cars. And yeah, if you can beat 26 with shoddy batteries, then great, but I'm pretty sure that this will be about 28 kilometers per hour with fresh new batteries. Pretty cool. So yes, everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel, you'll see more videos just like this one. Until next time, everybody, see you, bye, happy racing.